gun here. First off, I want to apologize for being AWOL for a while.
Where'd he go? Hollywood said, where'd who go?
Gary! Gary! Gary, where are you?
Since my last video posted, I got reassigned for work, that being my real job. And I had to start coordinating a relatively significant relocation. Now, without getting into all kinds of details y'all don't give a shit about anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that YouTubing is a hobby for me. I do it in my spare time and don't make any money from it. And I ain't had much spare time lately. But I did manage to stumble across this product recently, which was something that I only had mild interest in, if I'm being totally honest. But I'm generally a Q fanboy, and so I figured I'd pick one of these guys up. And with a name like
Presenting literally the best trigger ever made.
How could I not? So here we go. Now, Q started working on this little project several years ago. I remember Kevin Brittingham talking about it on the Q and Ass podcast, it seems like an eternity ago. Basically, Q was using the AR Gold trigger in the early honey badgers. And when American Trigger Corporation couldn't keep up with Q's supply chain needs, Q switched over to using the Geisley Super Dynamic. It's their flat face trigger. Now at the time, Kevin knew he didn't want to pay a premium to Geisley, who also had some issues keeping up with demand, and so they started working on making their own trigger in-house. Then along came the
unspecified virus of unknown origin.
And that caused us to figure out that the global supply chain was...
They'd built a house of straw. The thundering machine sputtered and stopped.
As did progress on getting this trigger out to the market. And most other Q products, to be quite frank. Now, I have made comments about this going all the way back to my early episodes on my channel. And back then, I made sarcastic comments about how I was too impatient to wait for their precious trigger and that I didn't give a shit. Then, about a month or so ago, I found one for sale online and I dropped $350 on it.
You serious?
Yes, Jonah. I'm afraid I am serious. This thing cost me $350.
Idiot!
Now, that is the backstory. So, in order to get a good look at it, I'm going to take a page from my hero, Steve 1989.
That's looking pretty good. Alright, let's get the sound on your tray.
Nice. Okay. First things first. The Q trigger is obviously a cassette-style trigger. And, I remembered it when I first installed the guy, seeming a little bit more substantial than it really is. But I think I was just thrown off because it's so goddamn shiny. And it is very shiny and chrome. Install, as with probably most cassette-style trigger packs, was pretty much idiot-proof. They included the slave pins, and this one actually uses 2 slave pins here. And they actually included the pin and hammer, or the trigger pin and hammer pins that are both double-sided. They're predicated on this little spring guy here to keep everything clipped into place, and so they gave you pins that have the notches on both sides so that you can't screw up and install them backwards. And the only other unique aspect of the install is you have this little plastic bumper. This thing just wants to fall out all the time, but this is necessary during the install to make sure it stays in place, because this keeps the spacing proper to make sure your pins get guided in the right location. I will say, taking this out of the gun in order to make this video, once you push the pins out of the way and there's no slave pin in place anymore, things start going flying on this. So I had to partially reassemble this thing in order to get it put back into one piece. And there's a lot of little bits and pieces and springs all over this guy. So that's about all the good stuff I have to say about it, because it kind of goes down here pretty quickly. it is a two-stage trigger. First stage is pretty much non-existent in terms of pull weight, but it is kind of long, especially compared to other two-stage triggers. And for example, we have the AR Gold here, and that first stage is minuscule by comparison to this guy. So there's quite a bit of a first stage, but there's almost no resistance to it. Barely registers on the trigger gauge to get that first pull. Then you hit the wall, and then it's a nice clean break. And I'll roll in the footage of it in a gun, showing you what it can do, and I'll show you the trigger pull. Now the reset is super short, but it's not very tactile. It's almost imperceptible. Got a bit of take up, and it goes bang, okay? Now, it is a very lightweight pull. That reset, very short, but not very tactile. So it's really easy to get going fast on this thing, like almost like paintball gun fast. Now, one of the other cool things is the safety. You can engage the safety even after with the hammer up. They did that, I don't know why, that's their thing, which I think is actually kind of nice. It makes a lot of sense that more guns should do that, but whatever. The feel of this trigger reminded me very much of the AR Gold here. When I bought my Honey Badger, I got one of the early ones, and obviously it came with these guys in the beginning. And so when I was having my conjugal visits with the Honey Badger while it was still in ATF jail, I got to shoot this guy a couple of times. And the first thing I noticed was this trigger is incredibly lightweight in terms of the trigger pull. And I'll roll in that footage too. This one's stupid light. But the real problem that I had with this guy was the reset. It was almost, again, imperceptible. It just didn't feel like much. It's barely a little clicky thing. And I don't know. Another two-stage trigger. Very light, easy. You hit a wall with a short take-up. Very distinct, very crisp break. But then the reset, it's there, but it's just, I don't know. It just wasn't for me. So as soon as I got the gun home, I ripped this guy out and I swapped it. Now I'll preface all this. I'm accustomed to shooting Glock pistols and Beretta pistols, and they have very pronounced resets on those handgun triggers. So that's kind of what I've gotten accustomed to in all my firearms. But any good mil-spec AR trigger also has a very pronounced reset. You know, when you think about, right here is one of the ALG triggers. Very simplistic, not exactly Geisley performance, and it's a single stage. But the pull weight on it is about 5 pounds, which is really good for, like, let's say a defensive carbine, home defense type of thing, because you have to actually want to pull the trigger in order for this thing to go bang. But the reset on these things is super tactile, and I really appreciate that. So with these guys, my biggest qualm with them isn't the fact that the trigger is stupid lightweight. The trigger pull on this isn't that much different in terms of the total pull weight from what I get off of, like, let's say a Geisley Super Dynamic Enhanced, which is kind of one of my favorite triggers. But that reset on this thing is like almost non-existent versus the Geisley, which is very pronounced, just like the ALGs, just like a mil-spec trigger. And I will say, even with the Geisley, I've done some hammer fire drills during training, and I even ended up tapping off, you know, an extra shot or two under those stressful circumstances that I wasn't intending. And that taught me I had a lot of work to do on my trigger discipline, but I could only imagine if I had something as stupid lightweight as either of these guys, and especially without that reset around, I think the recoil of the gun would be enough for me to end up double tapping this thing. So that just, it might be good to have a stupid lightweight trigger pull on a hunting rifle, where you want precision accuracy, but for, a carbine, I don't know, man. Not for me, anyway. I just don't need it. So what do I think overall? Well, I credit Q for making the best bolt-action precision rifle trigger for a semi-automatic. But it is by no means the best trigger ever made. There. I said it. Now, I did this video because the only other reviews that I've seen out there are from guys like Kit Badger and Talon Sai, who are basically on the Q payroll at this point as an extension of their company's social media platform. I ain't got nothing against either of those two guys, but they certainly aren't going to give us an honest review on YouTube about a product from a company that comps them thousands of dollars in gear. Now, me, on the other hand,
I don't know shit about fuck.
well, that's not entirely true. But seriously, when it comes to other people's opinions on shit...
Well, if I cared any less, I'd be dead.
So there you go. That is my review of the Q Trigger. The verdict is in. And it ain't worth $350 in my book. If you want a great trigger, you can get a Geisley Super Dynamic Enhanced for $240 or less when they go on sale. Now, it may take a few extra seconds to install, but you end up with just as good of a pull weight as this guy. And a much better reset. And then you can use that extra $110 that you saved on some training so you don't go shooting someone you don't mean to. Because, remember, without training, you'll never be as cool as Grand Thumb. So that's all I got for now. As always, thank you for watching. Thanks to my subscribers for sticking around through my little sabbatical. Might be a little time before I get back into a routine of dropping videos on any kind of regular basis, but I do plan on keep making content when I get settled into my new job. Be sure to go and check out my brother, Douchebag's Brother Dick, using the link in the video description. He hasn't been overly active either lately, but he's still around. And until next time, remember.
I don't know who you are out there, but I have a gun.